We have been talking all morning about tariffs and the U.S. economic relationship with our neighbors to the north. No industry is immune from this discussion, including the big business of sports. Canada is very important in the National Hockey League, with 7 clubs that are based in Canada. Joining us right now is NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman. And Gary, thank you for being here. Got a lot to talk about with you this morning. The revenue numbers that are coming in with the NHL, what you just saw with the face-off of the 4 nations. But I think we need to start this morning with the news of the day, and that's these tensions that are rising between 2 great partners, Canada and the United States. I think the NHL has unwittingly kind of played the public face of the bad blood that's been growing between the looming trade dispute between these 2 nations. We've seen it play out with some Canadian fans booing the national anthem, with some Americans getting kind of fired up, and you've had an American president and a Canadian prime minister who have all been weighing in all around the games as they've been playing on these things too. How do you see it from where you sit?
Well, welcome to my life. It's really unfortunate that these 2 great countries, great allies for hundreds of years, sharing, a long border together. And I think most of the tension isn't addressed at either country or at the people, because I spent a lot of time in the last 30 years in Canada, and Canadians love the United States and love Americans, but there's a policy issue that's going on, and it's unfortunate that the 2 countries, the people of the 2 countries that are sport, are caught in the middle of it.
It's an important part of the NHL. I think 25% of the NHL revenue comes from Canadian clubs. Right. In the NHL, everything's combined and mixed and blended so beautifully. You even pay all the clubs and all the players in American dollars. Yeah. What are you dealing with right now? How does it play out?
The issue in that regard is all players no matter which country they play in, get paid in U.S. dollars. Yeah. So if the impact of the tariffs is to see the Canadian dollar drop relative to the U.S. dollars, it will make it more difficult and more painful. We have revenue sharing, but a lot of our Canadian clubs do quite well. But that's going to be impacted by what happens with the Canadian dollar. I'm hoping that this is a moment in time and both countries find a way to work through this.
Have you had any conversations with anyone from the administration?
Not yet. We were with the Florida Panthers a couple of weeks ago with the president, but the issue didn't come up. And, in terms of understanding it from our standpoint, we're not really privy to all the discussions that are going on at the highest levels of both countries. So we get to be affected observers, as I guess you can say.
I assume you have sponsors that sell goods in both countries. What are you hearing from sponsors right now?
I mean, to the extent that there's uncertainty, to the extent that there's pressure on both economies and pressure on the dollars relative to each other, it's going to cause some difficulties that are going to have to be adjusted for.
I guess I would put you in the group of many, if not most, executives who are kind of hoping that this is things that are used as negotiation tactics, but then go away.
Well, that's why I'm hoping this is a moment in time, and whatever has to be sorted out gets sorted out. And if I guess we can be a microcosm of how this works, we're happy to play any role that we can.
Let's talk about the NHL business and the background for all of this. The business itself is at its strongest ever. I think the revenue came in for the 2024-2025 season expecting to exceed $6.6 billion. How'd you get there? What's happening?
Well, I think we're going to exceed $7 billion in mixed currency, and that's a function of the fact that the game keeps growing. Our attendance is strong as it's ever been. Our engagement with business partners is the highest peak it's ever been. I think we have 73 national partners between both countries. Our clubs are executing in terms of their business plans and their connectivity with their fans better than ever before. Our ratings are strong, and we have great media partners in Canada and the United States, whether it's Disney and Turner in the States and Rogers in Canada. And we're in a good place because the game has never been better. We saw that particularly with the Four Nations tournament and what interest that generated. I mean, we had record ratings in really both countries in terms of watching the Canada-U.S. games, the two of them, and it's great to see. And I think our fans and sports fans in general have been energized by what they've seen.
And it's sports rights. I mean, this is the moment. It just keeps getting richer and richer for the sports rights when you have money that's coming in from the streamers at this point, too. Every one of the leagues looks a little differently at these negotiations. What for you is the sweet spot in terms of what you want to make sure is available to the most viewers as possible, but also making sure you're getting as much money as you can for it?
By the way, those are the two issues that we're most focused on. We want to be widely distributed, which we are. ESPN and Turner, TNT, and ABC are doing a great job for us here, particularly over the last few years since we've re-engaged with them. Rogers in Canada doing the same thing. In fact, we're currently in an exclusive negotiating period with Rogers with our contract coming up. And we think that the broader the distribution, the better our fans are going to be served. Plus, we're using technology in unprecedented ways to bring more of our games, whether it's the connectivity that you can get with more data, what we can do with the visualization of the game, use of player and puck tracking, which we're using, using that to create animated games for young people. These are all the ways we're looking to connect, and we have our outdoor events. I mean, last weekend we had 94,000 people in Columbus, Ohio, watching a hockey game. Wow. I would have told you 10 years ago that would have happened, you would have thought I was crazy.
So when you say broadest distribution, do you mean broadcast, or do you mean where it's free for everybody, or do you mean broadest meaning, okay, a streamer that is international even though they're charging people to get there?
Well, it's a combination, and I think it's going to continue to evolve, particularly because of the difficulties we've seen with the regional sports channels. And so I think you're going to continue as contracts come up, you're going to see a mix. We've been, digitized, if you will, and streamed for 10 years in Canada. Rogers, from our last deal, has always had the digital rights as well. And when you look at our presence on ESPN+, we've been streaming, since we went back to the Walt Disney Company. So the combination of the two things, I think linear is still important. That's still your most viewed distribution for most people, particularly people my age or your age. Younger people who are cord nevers or cord cutters, they're going to look for alternate sources of getting their content.
So you got to be everywhere.
You got to be agile.
Yeah.